Zero-day exploits are interesting. They're exploits that only one or a secret group of folks know about. Having a full treasure trove of information on 0 days is kind of unique.
Rand did this study of 14 years worth of 0 days that they've managed to get access to, and the lifetime of these vulnerabilities.
These researchers, I don't know exactly whose data set they got access to. They got access to some sort of a data set.
Well, that's an interesting point, though. I mean, it was sort of eye-opening to me. The data set they got, 0 days are not easy to come by, right?
Yep.
So somebody agreed to play ball with these researchers. So they got government at 0 days, they got commercial 0 days.
They had access to about 200 0 days, but covering like a 15-year period or something.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So that's what makes this kind of research, I think, pretty good and powerful. Yeah. And I think basically they were trying to measure, what is the shelf life of a 0 day? And unfortunately, it's not great news. Right. Apparently, these 0 days last for quite a while.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. They kind of couched it that it's the trade-off is that, if only one group knows about the 0 day and they're using it, it's sort of to everyone else's benefit if it's not a bunch of groups using the same 0 day. If the government has a 0 day and they're using it, then it's good that a bunch of other people aren't also tracking it down.
A 0 day is only as good as you can keep it secret.
Right.
Once it gets out, once people know about it, then somebody will fix it, and then it's no use to them anymore. But I did find it very interesting that they were saying roughly a quarter of the exploits won't survive more than a year and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
But a quarter of them will survive more than 9.5 years.
That's scary, right?
That is really scary.
Before I read this article, I would have thought something like this would have probably lasted about a year or so, but it looks like it's much longer.
I thought 6 months, a year, a really good one, maybe 2 years. What was it? Only like 5.7% of them are discovered by somebody else within a year and a half.
It's almost like a moral, ethical conversation about these 0 days. What are you required to release back to the public, and what is safer to keep, secret?
That's why there's a black market in them. A really good 0 day will bring you a lot of money in the criminal underground and the dark web.
Yeah.
They also talked about, I like the terminology they used to define the 0 days. They talked about there's the alive ones that are still usable, the dead ones, and the zombie ones. I guess they're still usable, but not in every version of the software or things like that. And they had a whole bunch of terminology to describe exactly how the thing went from alive to dead. Killed by a researcher or killed by random refactoring of the code. Some of these things would frustrate me. For example, you had a really good 0 day. It was working for you. You were using it for 9.6 years. All of a sudden, they did a code refactor, and your vulnerability went away by accident. And then some of these things, they can be used forever, technically, because the older versions may not be supported by the vendor.
Old software lives forever. There's probably still COBOL software written in the 50s that is being used in.
But I think some of this research is showing us that that's not the real root of the problem, that these things live on. The problem would be if somebody knows about them and then another group knows about them and it's being sold on the dark web, like you're saying. I think this research sort of shows that these things tend to be kept pretty close to the vest. Whereas a regular vulnerability might get patched in days, weeks, months, a 0 day vulnerability could be alive for 5-6 years, and it may only be seen by one group, and it might be the group that put the 0 day out.
The thing about 0 days is, by definition, you don't know about them. So there's no real good way to protect yourself from them.
Depending on your environment, depending on your application, you need to think of creative ways to make sure that if one defense fails, there's another defense in place to pick it up. But you should design your system knowing that there's somebody out there who's going to try to break in, and they're going to do it in a way that you didn't anticipate.